And YouTube is live. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thanks, Paul. Rick, we'll turn it over to you as chairman to start this meeting up.
Okay, Becky, do you have the full roster? Because I see that we have Bill on and Brett, are you there? No? Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thanks, Paul.
George, I
Rick,
see you on.
you as chairman to.
Okay, how about Jason? Do we have Jason? Nope.
Jason's here. He's on mute.
Okay. Robert, did I see you on there or hear that you're on there?
Yep, I am here.
Okay, and Trent? Okay, and Lana, I heard you on.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, who am I missing?
Brett Olson won't be here. He's excused.
Okay. Anybody else we're missing, Lana? Or I'm sorry, Becky?
I think it's Tim and Trent.
Okay. All right, then we have the meeting order. Have you all had a chance to review the meeting notes from the last meeting? Because I was not present. Hopefully, can I get a motion to accept the meeting notes, please?
I motion to accept. Robert?
Thank you, Robert. Any second?
Jason,
This
second.
is Lana. I will second.
Okay, thank you. The meeting note, any discussion in regards to it? Okay, meeting notes are accepted. With that, I'm going back to Ty to discuss the visitations. Ty, are you still there?
Yes, sir. I'm
Okay,
here with that. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. While I'm doing so, I'm going to try to talk, which I'm not a very good multitasker. So, anyway, we are missing a little bit of data with what I'm going to be sharing with you today. First, with visitation, we are not. Let me make sure I can get here. Not that one. Let me get this one right here. Okay, with visitation, you can kind of see as we go through, we have I've got data from FY17 to as current as we could get yet. We've got 2 months that we haven't, the data wasn't provided to me as of 12:45 today. So anyway, the last one, FY21, is from July 1 to October 31st of 2020. But one thing you can see in here is that FY17, we're at 5,690,677 visitors. And then we just exponentially, well, not exponentially, but we steadily increase about 1 million visitors per year. And then if you look down at this one, and this is, I think, going to show us what 2021 is going to be, and it's going to be an exponential increase because we are almost already at FY17's total numbers for July through October. So pretty crazy. I know gathering the numbers, we had blockbuster visitation rates through December and also November, Thanksgiving, and just the school break over Christmas break was just amazing with what our parks and you know the surrounding recreational areas just experienced. So that's visitation where it is there. As I was talking to Rick before this meeting, I will include I will include the spreadsheets that go along with this. You can also get this off of our website. It's open and they're on our website. If you do in the little find or search bar, visitation, and it'll pull up all the information you need. You can go park by park, year by year with their visitation. So I will make sure that I include those spreadsheets with Becky, and we can put them in the meeting minutes. So you have it, but this is just a little easier to go through and hit the totals with. Next, I'm going to apologize right now just for the small print. Secondly, I'm going to apologize is that, as I said, our meeting was a little early the way we scheduled it. I normally don't get registration numbers for the previous year until about the 20th of January from the Division of from the Tax Commission, basically. So I do not have 2020's numbers, but what I wanted to kind of point out, and this is just like I said, an interesting fact in here is we've got records clear back from 1959. They steadily increased from 1959 to 2001. And then we almost got 80,000 registered boats in the state of Utah. And I would attribute that to that's kind of that introduction of the personal watercraft. That was that boom that we had when personal watercraft came into the market. And then it just started to slowly trickle down. You can see when we started hitting some of the recession, 2010, 11, we had a little bit of a hiccup. 12 went back up, 13 down. And we've been about the same number all the way across from 2013 to last year, 2019, at 64,000 to 64,000 to 66,000 registered boats. I think a lot of that decline too can be attributed to the cost. It's just the cost of things, the cost of owning a boat, but it's also a cost of registering a boat. And the boat owner that owned multiple boats and registered multiple boats every year now may only have one boat. And frankly, the boat owner, because of the costs of buying a new boat, the boat owner has moved from a boat owner to boat owners. And so it's not uncommon to see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even up to 10 people that are co-owners on a particular watercraft. So that's some of the things that we're seeing is these boats are being probably utilized more, but everybody that would normally own a boat is not. They're either sharing or they've limited what they do own. And it's just depending upon what free income folks have with that. So that's just a little bit of information about registration history.
So,
yes, sir.
A question on that. So even though the boats have gone down, boats have gotten more expensive. Has revenue stayed like as far as like tax base goes? Does that fluctuate according to the boats? I mean, is the tax base dropped or is the tax base?
Yes, the tax base will anytime that when the numbers it correlates with the amount of vessels that we have registered. So basically, to let you know what that is 2001 was a I'm going to say probably our largest revenue year that we've had on record, and so we're in and surviving this now. Revenue that comes through into the division of Parks and Recreation is there's 3 items. One is the registration fee, and that is it's the state registration fee. The county fee we do not see anything of. So we get a portion of that state fee. There we get about 20. That went up a little bit. We get about $36 out of that state registration fee with that. But some of that $10 that we are collecting in that is to offset money that was moved out of the boating account for AIS. So that's kind of refilling a hole that was created. So really, revenue wise, net revenue that we get out of registration, out of state registration is about $26 per vessel. And then we have the Coast Guard grant. That is kind of, it moves up and down. And really what that grant is it is a reimbursement for services, but it's not a true reimbursement for services. There's a pot of money. There's a big equation that this total number of money is being placed into it, plus how many registered boats the state has, how much the state spent last year in regards to recreational boating safety, and then the state gets an amount, and that amount varies every year from the Coast Guard. It ranges anywhere from 1.1 to 1.2 million dollars. Registration is roughly right. It's between 1.5 and $2 million. And then a unique one for the state of Utah is we are able to capture a gas tax. So there's an equation that is used, and it's based off one of the biggest numbers that triggers that is the registered boats that we have in the state of Utah that are and I should say motorized, but we have kind of like we have our total number of registered boats, and then it's equated from there of a gas usage, an average gas usage, and then we get that funding in there too, and so that's about $3 million that we get. So we're about high $5 million to low $6 million for our annual income for the boating program.
Thank you.
Ty, I know at one time it was discussed of whether licensing was going to take place with canoes, paddle boards, blah, blah, blah. Has anything else been discussed in regards to that? Since in a lot of the parks, they are almost a primary user at this point.
Yeah, it's been discussed, and that's about where it is.
Okay.
And that's kind of a national discussion also. Some states have done it, but they did it many years ago. Right now, there is a push to see if they can get a potential excise tax placed on non-motorized craft, and then that would go into this. It's a Sport Fish Restoration Fund, which was a combination, and Nathan, you're going to have to correct me on this. It's a combination of the Ding Johnson excise tax that was on fishing supplies and such there, and the Walletboro excise tax that was on boating supplies and stuff. And so it's combined together, and it's housed under the United States Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yep, and that's where all the boating access funds come from for this program. So we get that annual apportionment from the Fish and Wildlife Service based on the amount that all of that brings in nationally.
Okay.
To go back and just to answer one thing, so we, like I said, we have in between that high five to a low $6 million dollar income. We normally the account, once all the expenses have been taken out in a given year, we're in a scary situation that we run about it's a high $1 million to the high $2 million carryover. So if by chance we were to lose funding, we would have to do drastic cuts to be able to keep the program going. But it's just we're living within our means, but that's basically what our carryover balance is running with.
Okay. Any other questions that we have for Ty?
I can also touch on that question regarding non-motorized. Like Ty mentioned, it's something that we're grappling with on a national scale. Everyone's trying to figure out the best way to approach it, and there's really not a great answer at this point. One thing that, just from the AIS perspective, some of the surrounding states have managed to do is to put the AIS sticker fee on the non-motorized vessels. You see that in places like Idaho, Montana. That has been brought up a couple times in the last couple months among some of our lawmakers exploring that option for Utah. Right now, we are a little bit unsure as to where that's going to go. I will say that the one thing that this group has kind of run into in the past is we are seeing more and more voting access proposals related to non-motorized facilities. And when we start talking about potentially a fee on non-motorized watercraft in terms of some sort of like AIS sticker, like what our residents are already paying as part of the registration process, and now the non-residents bringing motorized boats in are paying that too. There's an avenue there to use that fee to both partially fund the AIS program, but also create a new pot of money that could go towards the installation and construction of non-motorized boater access projects. So I just want to throw that out there, that there's a conversation happening, and I think boating access is going to play into wherever the conversation leads, and we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to basically drag this out much longer with it, but I know that there have been a few states that have tried to have this occur. The state of Oregon was probably the latest one, and it failed miserably. I don't even think it got it. It didn't get out of committee for them. To match our process that we do for our lawmaking, but they spent a lot of time trying to figure out and did a lot of research about what the non-motorized user wants and what they are willing to do to pay a fee, and then also to see where the fee goes. And it's just because it will be a brand new tax and everything there, they want a tremendous amount of transparency, which it needs to be. And they want to see almost a dollar for dollar match for what they're paying or what is collected in there for access improvements for them with that. So I know the state of Oregon, and I'm happy the state of Utah doesn't get into this a whole lot. They have they've got to clear any type of blockages on any type of the rivers and anything like that. So they expend a lot of money in non-motorized areas, and they use their motorized registration to cover that. So that was one of the reasons they tried to go through and do these pieces. So you can just imagine in Oregon on some of those rivers, when a tree falls, it creates a snag or a strainer, then the state has to mobilize work crews to get there and pull that tree out. But mainly, we don't have too many trees. We usually have boulders that fall into our area, and it, depending on the water level, it makes bigger rapids. So there we go. So anyway, I'm done talking. I'll push it over here to Rick so we can go to our next thing.
Okay, Nate, you're up, bud. We have 2 updates from you on boating access grants and AIS.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rick. I am going to present a few slides here for boating access.
They're up.
Okay. So just kind of a recap. Last meeting, we went through and evaluated the FY22 projects. In summary, we had 9 project proposals submitted. We ended up approving 8 of those. The only ones that the only one that we did not approve was the Linden Marina parking project at Utah Lake. There were some concerns regarding, one, the configuration of the current parking area, and two, whether the proposed project would actually be able to handle the anticipated increased use over the next few years. So that one is something that we will have to go back to the project proponent. I will let them know of those concerns, and then I would probably expect to see a revised proposal coming our way again next year based on our concerns. Out of those 8 projects that we did approve, 7 of those were new projects. The only one that was a continuation of an existing project was the phase 3 of the Fish Lake Marina renovation project. In total, those 8 approved projects are going to be consuming $301,000 in federal funds and just over $34,000 in state parks matching funds. And obviously that's excluding Fish Lake, which is a whole nother animal and a pot of money that's kind of already been spoken for. So that's what we did last time. I did fail to mention during the last meeting that we do have 2 other projects that we fund annually that are basically, the one is certainly something that we need. It's the admin grant for the boating access program, which partially pays for my time, but then also a lot of the the restroom servicing, the garbage, the sanitation, all that stuff at many of the state reservoirs around the state. And that typically comes to about $110,000 annually in federal funds. And then, the match for that comes from Division of Wildlife restricted funds. And then we have had over the last several years a Flaming Gorge infrastructure operation and maintenance project that has to do with some of the docks, the removal and installation of docks at Flaming Gorge. That is typically around $22,500 in federal funds each year, and Parks provides us $7,500 in match for that project. Having said that, I failed to bring those up the last time. I was a little bit concerned because those amounts were not accounted for when we were evaluating projects. However, I can't remember exactly the $600 and something thousand that we have available in federal funds for FY22 projects, including that Fish Lake project to some extent. That's only about 75% of what we typically get from Fish and Wildlife Service in total funding. We get that final total sometime in February. So as long as that 75% stays relatively the same, then our final amount that we get will be more than enough to cover these additional 2 that I failed to mention last time. So we should be fine there, unless for whatever reason the revenue generated through the taxes is not what it used to be. But from what we saw this last summer, I don't think that's going to be a problem. So that's where we are with that. Any questions on any of that before I kind of jump into some of the discussion that we started last time?
So when you say at Flaming Gorge that basically 30 grand is for docks, what do they actually do up there with the 30 grand? Can you answer, you know?
Yeah, Bill. So it's a grant that goes to the Forest Service, and they're essentially putting in and taking out docks a couple times a year. It's for their staff, it's for their construction crews, all that stuff. Typically, it doesn't end up being $30,000 per year. I think in the last few years, it's been around $20,000 to do that 2 times per year. But that's what that's for. I can't even remember exactly where that location is on the gorge.
Okay.
Hey, Nate, George here. So is this where I should ask my questions, or are you going to go into the projects?
I wasn't planning on diving into the specific projects. If you have any specific questions on any specific project, I would bring them up now and we can get into that.
Okay, so there's 2 projects. One is the Jordan River mini trail, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked through that project proposal, I noticed that They mentioned a lease of some private property, but I never saw anywhere in the project proposal what the amount of the lease was, who was paying for it, and what the time was on the lease. Because they planned 20 years for the facility, but I don't know what the lease is. So what I don't want to have happen is that the lease expires in 5 years, and then they come to us and say, hey, by the way, we've got to have X number of dollars to continue this lease. That wasn't outlined in that project proposal. And then the other thing that caught me was they mentioned an appropriate fee to cover the cost of the stuff. But a good portion of that money for the rental fleet that they're doing comes from public funds. What's an appropriate fee? Could they price the public out of the opportunity to use that facility? Those were my two main ones on that particular project. And then I have another project I had a question on.
No, I appreciate those questions and those concerns, George. To get through the leasing part of this, we don't dive into the specifics of any lease that has already been acquired. The one protection that we have is that in that proposal, and we would require this regardless, the project proponent is responsible for maintaining public access and maintenance over the useful life of whatever we're building. In this case, it's 20 years. So if their lease ran out, it would be completely up to them to figure out how to maintain public access and to maintain that. Otherwise, they need to reimburse us the cost we've already put in.
Okay.
That's one safeguard we have. The second one is that because they're on the hook for all maintenance over the next 20 years of the specific project, they have to make sure that whatever they're charging the public is actually going to bring in revenue. Otherwise, they're not going to have the costs on their end to be able to keep up their end of that maintenance contract.
Okay. All right.
But that information, we probably do need that information. It certainly would be nice to have.
Well, and it was just a question that was, was kind of, I don't want to say ghost, but there's nothing there outlining that particular part of that proposal. And I'm just concerned that because there's hundreds or probably $1 million going into that facility, and there's no details on the lease. So,
George, I can reach out to the applicant and get that information for you if you would like, and then just
that would be awesome, because that's a great concern for me, especially when we're spending this much money to ensure that it's going to be, if we're going to do it, it's got to be an ongoing thing. The other thing I don't think they compensated or accounted for was now Salt Lake City is building one over where the old water park was. And so they're going to put like $2 million into that mansion, and they're building a boat ramp, and they're putting in rentals from what I understand. So we'll see how all that pans out.
Yeah. And the other thing, George, and everyone, is this project also, the total cost of the project is reliant on several different pots of matching funds, some of which have already been acquired, a few of which have not been acquired yet. And so the way I look at this is we would tentatively approve this project if that's what the council decides, and then it would be contingent on them acquiring those additional matching funds from those other sources to be able to complete it. Because in my mind, the last thing we want to do is provide funds to someone who can't complete a project, because that doesn't do us or the public any good.
Okay. So you ready for the second one?
Yeah, let me just say, anyone else who has specific questions on that project, please email your questions to me so that when I email the project applicant, I have everything kind of ready to go that we just need answers to. So if anyone looks over that and has other questions, just let me know. Okay, George, hit it.
So did we approve the strawberry enhancement project?
We did.
So the question I had on there is, because we had Otter Creek doing fish cleaning stations, And then Strawberry, as part of their enhancement, had 2 fish cleaning stations, but they were like $12,000 less expensive than the one at Otter Creek. So I'm not sure that it's apples to apples. I don't know. I just noticed that they were buying 2 of them for like $10,000 to $12,000 less than the one we're buying at Otter Creek for the actual fish cleaning station.
Okay, I don't know. I'm glad you caught that. I did not catch that. I'll have to look at that. I know there are a few different fish cleaning station manufacturers out there, and some of them are better than others. I didn't see whether they specified one manufacturer or not.
I didn't see the manufacturer on there. I think in the Otter Creek one, it was the Barracuda. I think was the manufacturer, but this one didn't have a manufacturer listed, and I'm just concerned that because I know the history of fish cleaning stations, and some of them work and some of them don't work so well, and so if we're going to spend, I think it was $52,000, want to make sure it's the right one.
Good point. And Ty, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Barracuda is kind of the one that we've been going with and kind of the gold standard that's worked well for us.
Yeah, it's the one that will not only, I mean, trout get chewed up pretty easily with that, but when we start getting into cats and things like that, the Barracuda usually grinds through a catfish head pretty well.
Okay, well, that's all I had. Those are the 2 that I brought up.
No, and I think they're great. I'm just making some notes with that too, so we can make sure that on our next agenda we can make sure that we discuss this follow up amongst the group.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Well, kind of while we're at it, did anyone else have any concerns or further questions on any of those projects that we approved during the last meeting?
Nate, Rob here.
Yeah.
I got a question. So the Flaming Gorge infrastructure operation and maintenance, is that paid to the parks, or is that paid directly to the operators?
It's paid directly to the Forest Service. So the Forest Service ends up paying to have that work done, and then we reimburse the Forest Service for that cost.
Okay. I just know that we talked about Lucerne asking them to produce what they've been getting for the docks or for their maintenance fee, and asking them to prove that they have actually updated, because I don't think they have. That's why I brought that up.
Okay, good question.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't think that O&M. I don't think that was going towards Lucerne. I think that was somewhere down reservoir, if I remember right.
I believe so.
With it from off my memory, but we'll have to go back and look at that so we can get that. I'll put that note in there so make sure that we can transfer it for you guys, because we've had a change of guard a couple of times since we've had that started with that. So,
And I'll chime in. Lucerne is a private operator,
yeah,
where Cedar Springs and Mustang Ridge are all Forest Service. So that's probably the difference right there.
I thought Cedar Springs was ran by the family that has the restaurant and everything on there. Those docks and
Yeah, I believe
I don't know on that one. I could have sworn.
yeah, I believe Cedar Springs is privately too.
Well, I can get you the location of that project before this call is up. I can look at the file fairly easily.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're all individually owned.
Sorry, what was that, Bill?
I think all the marinas up there are individually owned now. Private individuals.
Huh. I don't know. That very well could be. I know the Forest Service manages several of them, and because we're in a discussion with the Forest Service in the state of Wyoming on a rapid response plan for Flaming Gorge, and when we start talking about closing down ramps and those types of things temporarily, the Forest Service is the one that has that authority So they're the main one that we're currently talking with, although that's going to expand to the marinas individually in the next couple weeks.
Ty, would it be difficult to get to actually find out who does own those?
I don't think so. I think it'd just be a simple reach out to the Ashley National Forest, and we can figure that out.
Okay.
And Rick, I can do that. I've been working with them pretty much every day for the last month, so
Okay.
I can reach out to them.
If you would, that would be appreciated. I think it would help us in decision making going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, AIS.
Real quick, we touched on this, and this might end up being a bigger discussion, but I just want to mention it again. We talked about the idea of creating a certain maintenance fund or replacement fund or whatever you want to call it that would be set aside for maintenance and replacement projects only. That was due to the fact that we have a bunch of aging facilities around the state. There is the potential to have to replace several of these all at once, which we can't really afford to do with our current annual apportionment. And we got to grapple with the question of whether we should continue building and installing new facilities when we may struggle maintaining the existing ones. The public is really hammering these facilities right now with their use, and before we start putting up new ones, we've probably got to make sure that what's getting used is taken care of. So in concept, it seemed like the council kind of approved that idea, that concept, and just in review, we get about $950,000 or so in federal funds for boating access annually. That number changes from 950 to about $1,050,000 each year. State parks, obviously, their availability to match some of these funds varies based on the current commitments, whether they have additional boating infrastructure grant projects that they also have to match out of that account. So it's kind of anywhere between 50 and 300,000 depending on the year. When we're talking about a maintenance fund, we talked about maybe it's appropriate to base off it a certain percentage of the available funding each year. There's also the option of just having it be a fixed amount, or even a certain number of projects, or a percentage total of the total projects approved each year. Those are all new kind of different ideas. And then another question a couple questions I want to throw out there that we probably have to grapple with at some point. Should maintenance projects, should those be considered differently and evaluated differently than new projects? When we're talking about maintenance and replacement, should maintenance of existing projects be prioritized over replacement of aging structures, or should those just be lumped together? They're all one and the same. And if so, is the evaluation criteria that we use to compare maintenance or replacement projects against one another, should that be different than the criteria we use to evaluate new projects against one another? Those are all things we probably, if we want to go that route, those are things I'm going to throw out there that we would probably need to figure out long term. Then I just wanted to wrap up with, this is a picture of the new retaining wall up at Bowery Haven Marina at Fish Lake. If any of you had been up there, to say that was on the verge of a disaster was probably an understatement. It was certainly a health and safety risk. So this is part of the multi-million-dollar effort that we're engaging in up at Fish Lake. And as I said last meeting, FY22 will be the last year that project is under construction, and we're looking forward to seeing everything new on the ground there. So With that, any boating access related questions before I hop into the AIS review?
If I can, I'm just going to put one thing in here on the boating access with it. I think this is something that's not going to go away. Nathan and I will work in getting some ideas or some options placed in there, because I know it's kind of hard for you all to advise us when we're actually the ones that are trying to and on the hook for some of these accounts. So I think if Nathan and I come and we give you 3-4 options, or maybe even just 2, and allow you guys to look at them, vet them, and prioritize what you feel would be the best options to roll with, then it gives us, in essence, a direction for us to start moving for the future. And then when we have new grants coming in, we can either redo the application or whatever else to assist with us prioritizing these items when, before they sit, you guys see it in.
Ty, one of the things, and this is just going into different maintenance and new, projects, to me, offhand, seem like they should be, separated. But one of the things is that were any of these funds in the past handled by Dan Clark? And if so, are those just coming under your decisions now?
Yeah, we're not really sure how everything's going to kind of play out from that situation there. So I think it's going to be ran, and as of right now, what we're doing is we've moved this out to our region maintenance crews, and we have moved a person that has kind of they could apply for this position, and they're kind of the contract administrator or the construction administrator for that region.
Okay.
Sorry for that in the background. Hang on just a second. It's one of those dinosaur things that I have on the wall, a landline phone. And for some reason, I'm pretty sure looking at the number, it's telling me that I've got a critical vehicle warranty situation. So, anyway, so sorry about that interruption. But anyway, we moved these positions in there to it was kind of to assist Dan, but now we've kind of farmed all the projects out to these construction supervisors in the 3 regions that we have. So we have 3 of them there, and then we have, in essence, Dan's assistant, who is filling in for that position in interim. He's kind of covering the larger projects and such. And so, yeah, it's changed, and I don't know if I'm actually, Becky will probably laugh, I don't know if I'm actually capturing it the way that it is, because it's, I think day by day, it's kind of a dartboard situation, and until we can get it hammered down and find out which way it can work and kind of recover from that incident or incidents, then it's going to be a little hard to tell. Thanks for that question, Rick.
Okay. All right, Nate, do you want to do the AIS part?
Sure. Let's see. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly review the 2020 season for us, and then kind of lay the groundwork for what we're looking at for 2021. For those of you that attended the last AIS task force meeting, a lot of this will be very similar to what you saw that time, but we do have a few new numbers here. So this graph just kind of shows you the inspection and decontamination workloads that our staff working alongside state parks personnel and then National Park Service staff at Lake Powell have seen over the last, 7 years. 2014, we were one of the largest programs in the West, and we were only doing relatively few inspections, just over 100,000. And we were doing, 1,500 decontaminations per year. If you look at this graph, the columns, those bars represent the number of inspections each year, and that y-axis is over on the left. That line represents the number of decontaminations that is associated with that axis on the right. You see just a steady increase in the number of inspections and decontaminations each and every year, with kind of a steeper slope going up into the 2020 year. 2020 was absolutely crazy, and probably most of you saw that when you were out, boating or fishing or whatever, and Ty's already alluded to it with state parks visitation. It was just a huge year for recreation, and those were reflected in our inspection and decontamination numbers. So statewide, 2019 up until this last year was our record, and we had just over 300,000 inspections, or we also call them interdictions, and just under 9,000 decontaminations. 2020 was just far and away above anything we had seen. We are almost 450,000 inspections and over 11,000 decontaminations. And if you look at just the Lake Powell numbers, we did almost 150,000 inspections at Lake Powell working with the National Park Service, and just under 4,000 decontaminations. And I'll remind everyone that Lake Powell was even closed for an entire month in May. So those numbers would be huge compared to what we saw anywhere else. And that 147,000 inspections we did at Lake Powell is bigger than any other AIS program in the West outside of Colorado and Montana. So Lake Powell is huge, and it's going to continue to be a challenge for us. This table just shows you kind of a breakdown water by water and how that's compared to 2019. Again, most of these are just far and away way above what we had seen in 2019. You look at a place like Pine View or at a place like Bear Lake, you're almost double what we had last year, which is crazy to think about. But really across the board, you're talking 50 to 70% higher in most of these locations. And based on what's happening at the start of 2021, I don't expect this to be much different than what we're going to see in 2022, which is a little bit of a scary thought. I do want to mention that we have developed an interactive AIS dashboard that our GIS team has put together that provides essentially real-time reporting of all these different inspection stations around the state, the number of decontaminations. If you look up on the upper right here, you can select the station that you want to focus in on. And there are also a bunch of different date ranges that you can select here. You can do it by year. You can do it, all of our data over the last several years in this particular database. And it breaks down each location also based on the type of boat we are encountering at that location, whether we're seeing largely wakeboard boats or PWCs or what have you. And then also where those boats are mostly coming from. So, at a place like Bear Lake, we're seeing nearly 40% of those boats are returning after having been at Bear Lake, but there's also over 50% that were last used somewhere else. So all of this information helps kind of paint a picture so we can do a proper risk assessment to figure out where we need to put our resources. And actually, here, I'm going to try and paste this in the chat box. That is the link to this dashboard, and I'm sure it'll be in the notes as well. But yeah, feel free to go there, play around with it. It is a little bit slow in loading because it is pulling information from a database that now has several million records. We are trying to figure out a way to host it a little bit differently to speed it up. And we also are leading an effort to create a regional database that will have data from all of the surrounding states in the West, and it will allow us to better be able to track boat movement through states rather than within just a single state.
Are you going to have the resource up this year, Nate, with all that?
Sorry, what was that?
Are you going to have the resources to keep up with all the inspections and decontaminations this year, do you feel?
That is a great question, and we will figure out how to manage one way or another. We've got a couple exciting programs that we're going to be piloting that I'll talk about here in a second that will hopefully allow us to offload some of this workload to either automated systems or newer technologies. But yeah, that's a good question, and that's a concern for us for sure.
Okay.
We did receive an appropriation during the 2020 legislative session for nearly $1.4 million that would allow us to do a variety of things. And one is to bolster our Lake Powell containment efforts through establishing new inspection stations on 3 separate highways coming out of Lake Powell. One near Kanab, one near Hanksville, and then another near Blanding. Right now, we are in the process of purchasing property in Kanab. We are very close to starting the purchasing process for a property in Hanksville, and it looks like Blanding will probably have to wait, but that is the lowest priority. We're struggling trying to find an appropriate spot of land there that will work for pulling boats in and out and identifying any property that's actually available to lease or purchase. The last one, that wasn't part of this appropriation, but it's going to be new for 2021, is we have established a mandatory inspection station just outside of Vernal on the way to Flaming Gorge. So that inspection station now will be intercepting boats headed to Flaming Gorge, Red Fleet, and Steinecker reservoirs. So that's something that we're excited about. That's been a couple of years in the making, and we should be staffing that full time here probably in late spring. So we've got a couple different things going on here to modernize our program. We're mostly just because of the workload. Ty, you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. I do that too. So I just want to make sure that we just throw out one thing with the new port that is being placed on Highway 6 in the Price area. Was that a thought of a potential expansion? And have you talked with UDOT with that as another pinch point coming back to the Wasatch Front?
Good question. As far as I know, we have not talked to UDOT. That would be probably a lower priority than Hanksville or Blanding, just because it's a little bit farther removed. That certainly may be an option if none of those other ones work out. The one challenge for us is we need multiple filters and multiple safety nets en route, but at some point it no longer really makes sense because, as you know, we could probably always use more funding at a place like Deer Creek or Jordanelle. So what's the line where we've got enough in place that we feel comfortable and now those resources can be directed somewhere else? So it's a good question, and I'm sure we're probably going to be approaching that in the next year or two. We've got a similar challenge up near Strawberry with the Sheep Creek Road going in, and we're talking about new inspection stations to be able to intercept boats using that road now. So we're basically in an arms race at this point, unfortunately. But yeah, so we've got a couple different things going on. Obviously, we're always looking to improve our efficiency. We've got to figure out a way to increase our capacity just because of that graph that you saw. Those inspections and decontaminations are not going to go down. They're going to continue to go up. How do we stay at, in lockstep, in pace with that? And then we need to figure out a way to disperse the workload because based on those Lake Powell numbers that you guys saw, our Lake Powell crew, I don't envy them at all. In fact, I'm pretty surprised that we have anyone left at this point. They just get hammered each and every summer, and we got to figure out a way to support them. So we've got a few different programs I'm going to touch on in more detail coming up, but we've got a a port passport program that's going to help automate data collection for us. We've got the private decontamination program that we're looking to add some vendors to help us provide additional decon options for boaters around the state, but particularly along the Wasatch Front where we don't have a bunch of great options for them. And then probably the thing I'm most excited about, a hot water dip tank for decontamination. So the private decontamination program, right now we have contracts in place with 5 businesses around the state. One is specializing in providing mobile decontamination services to the public in central Utah, which is kind of a cool idea, and we're anxious to see how that works out. The Division of Wildlife is going to be paying for this program, so boaters will not be charged for any of these services aside from an additional fee to have someone associated with this mobile company come to their residence or wherever they choose to have that done. That's going to be paid by the boater, but the decontamination work is going to be paid by the Division of Wildlife. Our FY21 budget for this entire program is $400,000. Based on the fact that this program didn't get up and running really until late fall, and a lot of the training could not take place because of COVID, I doubt that we're going to even use half of that number up. But that's the anticipated budget for FY22 as well. So we're hoping to keep that at 400 or 500,000 kind of each and every year. Push boaters to some of these businesses. The businesses benefit, the boaters benefit through increased convenience, and it takes some of the workload off our people that are on the verge of burnout at this point. And the ultimate goal is just to make sure that we are intercepting boats and decontaminating them before they show up at these reservoirs, because when that boat requiring decontamination shows up at a Pine View at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning, that's a problem for us, and that's a big challenge. And we don't want that. We want that taken care of before that boat shows up anywhere close to the reservoir. So we don't have to worry about that decontamination at that point. It's simply taking that information down and letting them launch.
Nate, how
Yes.
is this going to be communicated to the general public?
Good question. We have I'm butting heads with our outreach a little bit on this one. Because we can't specifically name any businesses in any of our outreach material, even though we need to direct people there. So we are going to be using social media to put out posts saying, hey, there's a new option for boaters passing through Hanksville. Please refer to the new decontamination location map on our website or something along those lines. We're going to do a few different press releases as these vendors get up and running, but a lot of it's going to fall to the vendors themselves. We're going to give them our stamp of approval, and they've been certified through our program. They are official decontaminators, but some of that's going to have to fall to them directly. We'll do our best to let others know there are additional options out there as much as we can, but we can't, unfortunately, put a name to any of these new partners because apparently, and again, this isn't my opinion, but apparently it shows favoritism.
Okay.
Nate, got a question for you.
Yes.
Why can't we? Being out of the DNR, why can't we get the other dealerships that they don't care? They're not going to care, and I'm sure they're willing to, have a pamphlet on their service desk or something, or at least let these other dealerships know that if they did not join the ASI program, then at least be the decent dealer that you should be and say these dealers are.
That's a great point, Robert. And yeah, if we can do that, that would be fantastic. Again, we are apparently, from what I've been told, in an awkward position. We can't produce anything that has any specific business names on it. So we would probably have to rely on someone outside of the division to partner with us and kind of take the lead on that. I'm certainly happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, I'll put let me talk to a couple of the dealers, and you know what, let me ask them what they would like, what would they like to see, because at the end of the day, regardless, it's all in our benefit. So, and if they chose not to be in, the ones that would be hard is if they applied and they did not get it. That's the ones that are going to be the hard ones. Other than that, I think majority of them are going to be willing to say, hey, look, we don't do decontamination, but these guys do. They're closest to you. So the only factor that I can say that I think they will have a problem with is that they're literally telling their customer to go to somewhere else. And that's the number one thing that we would have to try and convince them that it's not about a customer issue. It's about, the actual, what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any idea that I can go to these dealers and maybe present them with something, please speak up, because it's going to be hard enough for me to go and talk to these guys and say, hey, look, tell your customer to go over here. But, how can we, I'm asking the board, look, I have no problems. I will gladly go talk to all the dealers. I have all the emails of the owners and everything, but it has to be put in a fashion that, how can I say it, that is not damaging to them. So if anybody has any ideas, please either say it to me or email it to me or something. Give me some ideas that I can go off of and maybe build something on.
I appreciate that, Robert. And I just want to thank you too for kind of taking a lot of this on and being that liaison between the dealers and the AIS program and getting them involved and interested in, especially in the new decontamination program. We certainly couldn't have done that without you. So I appreciate that.
Well, I don't think we're done by far.
No, not by a long shot. Yeah. Well, yeah, that conversation can certainly continue, but yeah, as far as outreach, we're in a little bit of an awkward situation, but we can certainly work around that. The second pilot program that we're putting out that actually you're probably going to see on the ground here at the beginning of February is the Port Passport program. It's been going since October. It's essentially the use of high-speed cameras on 2 launch ramps at Lake Powell to automatically collect bow numbers of boats coming up and down the launch ramps at both Wallweep and Bullfrog. It will help us to auto-generate records in the database that we use to be able to pull up use history records of boats and determine whether a boat needs a decontamination or not. Right now at Lake Powell, as probably most of you know, a lot of those boats either, they leave either before or after our people are there. Some of them actually do that intentionally, so they don't need to be inspected. That's a problem because those are probably the highest risk boats, because those boaters that are intentionally skirting the system probably really don't care a whole lot about the resource. Those are the ones that we need records for. And so this system will run 24 hours a day, every day, capturing those bow numbers. For those boats that we are unable to inspect, there will at least be a record of that boat having been at Lake Powell. So wherever it shows up next, we can pull that record up and say, whoa, you need a decontamination, buddy. You need to come over here with us, rather than asking them where they've been and then telling us, oh, we only come here. So that's pretty cool. We're going to continue to do our inspections, and any inspection record we put into the database will overwrite any auto-generated record that the camera produces for us without any inspection data associated with it. We're also, part of this program also is going to include the development of a user interface on the mobile phones that can allow us to scan bow numbers of boats showing up to launch at places, and that will essentially spit out, based on a variety of things kind of happening on the back end, it'll spit out a red or green light saying, red, this boat needs a decontamination, or green, this boat is good to go, proceed. So it's pretty cool. It's going to help expedite our data entry process on the front end, get people on the water faster, but also eliminate a lot of the user error that comes from just someone sitting on a launch ramp inputting records of 500 boats in one shift. You're bound to see mistakes, and hopefully this will kind of get us away from that. And then lastly, the hot water dip tank. So we are partnering with the state of Idaho and now actually the Bureau of Reclamation as well to construct a hot water dip tank that's going to be going down to Lake Powell on the state line launch ramp. The tank is being fabricated right now. The anticipated completion date for the tank itself is March 8th. We're hoping to do a pilot decontamination shortly after that at the warehouse where it's being fabricated up here in Salt Lake. And then it will be moved down to the state line launch ramp with help from the National Park Service and be in operation by May 1st. This will significantly reduce the decontamination time for boats like wakeboard boats that have all these different ballast systems that are a nightmare for us to fill. This tank is essentially going to be full of hot water at 105 degrees. The boat will be back down into it. All those internal raw water systems and those intakes will be submerged. All those systems will be fired up all at once, essentially flooded with this hot water. It'll sit for 2 minutes. They spit it all out, and then they drive off. So in theory, you could reduce the time it takes to do a complex wakeboard boat from an hour and 15 minutes to 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
That is pretty exciting, especially given the fact that we're doing 4,000 of those at Lake Powell every year. Obviously, you're not having to deal with all the stupid attachments that you have to when you're looking at all these fake lakes for all these different intakes of these boats. These boats are becoming more complex each and every year, and we're always encountering systems where you need some sort of specialized attachment for this one boat. Otherwise, you can't even get into it. So hopefully it will reduce all those variables that kind of are out of our control, and it will also be a future-proof decontamination method. Regardless of what crazy systems the boat industry comes up with, if you can get water in the system by sitting in a lake, you can get water into that system by sitting in this tank. So we're pretty excited about it. It's never been done before, never been tried before. This is going to be a pilot program, and if it works like we think it's going to work, and yes, there will be some bugs, I can see another one of these potentially up at Bullfrog in 2023, and I think you'll be seeing these pop up. I've already had multiple states contact me saying, if this works, we're next on the docket to have one of these put at our most popular reservoir. So you could easily see a dozen of these pop up in the next 3 years if this one works, which is pretty cool. And then just kind of moving forward, we got all these pilot programs we're looking at. We got that Kanab inspection station that we're going to work into our Lake Powell program. And one of the reasons too, that Kanab inspection station, we're not really sure what the state of Arizona is going to do. They've been a little bit flaky, to put it nicely, down at Lake Powell, and we have had to react to what they have either committed to do or not committed to do, and we're quite frankly tired of that. So this will be a backup regardless of whether Arizona staff are manning Wahweap and Antelope Point ramps or not. This station will be able to interdict all those boats for us anyway. Additional rapid response planning. We're just finishing up and finalizing the rapid response plan for Flaming Gorge. Once that's finalized, we have the template we like. You're going to start seeing these things churned out, probably a handful or more each and every year after this. And then we're partnering with the USGS on developing a structured decision-making framework for how to best utilize eDNA in our early detection monitoring efforts. It's a very slippery slope, and again, no other Western state is doing this. We will be the first, and there are a lot of eyes on us, so we're being very careful, but we feel like eDNA is something we've got to learn how to use because It's a tool that's so much more powerful than what we're currently using, but we just got to figure out how to use it appropriately. And then the last thing I'm going to mention, we just recently had a meeting with a bunch of the Western states, subject matter experts in the AIS world, fish chiefs, to talk about how we can better come together to put together a regional approach to invasive mussel management in the West. Ty was part of that. Thank you, Ty, for participating. And we started off by doing a SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of what's currently happening in the West. And some of the strengths identified were the communication between the states, the coordination between the states, and some of the inspection and decontamination standards that are being used by AIS staff around the West. Some of the weaknesses included gaps in coverage at some of these, ports of entry and other places, inconsistencies in authority and enforcement capability. That was a big one that, luckily in Utah, we have a very strong enforcement component to our program, but in reality, we are arguably the only state in the West that does, and that's a problem. Opportunities involve some new federal funding that's going to be going to the Colorado River Basin and through the Water Resources Development Act. There's an opportunity to figure out a more stable funding source. Like a lot of the Blue Ribbon work, it comes from a dedicated pot of funding that is there every year. That model is a good one for figuring out a way to fund AIS programs each and every year and not having this giant question mark saying, oh my gosh, we hope the funds come through because we just don't know if we're going to have a program this year. That regional database that I've mentioned, there's a ton of opportunity to better utilize that for our risk assessments. And then the threats, we have a couple states in the West that just have a ton of water bodies infested with quagga and zebra mussels. And quite frankly, I don't know, sometimes they express a lack of concern regarding what happens outside their state because they just don't have anything to lose anymore. The lower Colorado system, there's a lot of jurisdictional complications that go along with that. There's authority gaps that are huge there. And then outreach messaging fatigue. How many times can you tell a boater that quagga mussels are bad and you got to clean, drain, and dry your boat before that boater just says, I've heard it, get on with it. We need to reinvent some of the messaging while also still staying true to the message, which is sometimes difficult. I don't want to get into this a whole lot. This is probably going to be something that we're going to talk about at our next meeting, but there's the potential for a new AIS related bill on the Hill this next legislative session that might have us require the Division of Wildlife to draft a statewide rapid response plan for invasive mussels. I'm not going to dive into this because, like I said, it will likely happen and we'll probably have more specifics regarding it by our next meeting. So at that point, I can fill the group in.
Hey, Nate, I just want to chime in on that the bill's already been filed.
Yep.
And it does have a number, but I didn't see a fiscal note with it.
Yeah, the fiscal note, I provided some numbers that really the only fiscal impact it would have is my time and our law enforcement sergeant or lieutenant's time to figure out how to put this thing together. It's going to be a pretty intense process, and quite frankly, I don't have a whole lot of time this spring to burn, but the bill says that we would be required to report that to the legislature, I believe, by August 1st.
Yes. Yep.
So it would be a quick turnaround for sure. So any other questions? That was a lot of information very quickly.
Okay, if no questions, thanks, Nate. It's always very informative on the information that you give to us, and we appreciate it. Do we have other business that we need to discuss?
Rick, is there any way I could have a few minutes?
Sure.
Right before.
You have 13 and a half, as a matter of fact, Jason.
Okay, I'll take 10. right before this meeting started, I ended up getting a PowerPoint. Down here, we're still dealing with a boat ramp at Hype Marina, and as you guys are fully aware of, and we're really trying to get Glen Canyon National Park to deal with it. And I just got this email. We're going to do a presentation for the Park Service, so they haven't seen this yet, and I'd just like to share it with you guys before you're going to see it before they do. So if any of you guys are BFFs with the superintendent, please don't call him and tell him this is coming his way. But it's pretty interesting. If I can just share my screen right here. Can you guys, and I'll just take a few minutes and kind of just briefly go over this. We've been working with an organization called Returning Rapids, as well as American Whitewater and American River Association, because we can't get anywhere with this boat ramp at North Wash at Hype Marina. It's getting to be a huge issue as it's come up from time to time, and we've actually been dealing with this since 2003, and the Park Service has come back and said, hey, we need to do environmental studies. This is going to take 2 years. This is in 2003. We feel like, we need to have our engineers look at it. And so it's been going on almost 20 years that this is the ramp that we've been dealing with. I just kind of want to show you guys can you guys all see that?
Yes.
This ramp that's down there, and man, anything that we need to try to figure out how we can push these guys to doing something. Right now, as we're going down, here's the old ramp. You guys may remember that back in the day, the old Hyatt ramp. This is the concrete ramp right here coming down. And can you see my mouse on here? You guys, yeah. So my mouse from about right here to the river's edge right here is almost a mile. And the Park Service, their idea now is that what they want to do is come in and carve a road in through this mud, and put in a access here, to access it. And looking at it right here, here's currently where the takeout is. This is high water. And what we're dealing with now is they've discovered this is what they call a perched river. The original river channel for the Colorado River is right over here. It's right underneath this block right here. So there's a chance at some point that the river could change direction and come through here. It just doesn't give it a really stable environment. But here's the ramp in 2003. Here it is. Here's the boat ramp right here. You can see how far the river is away. People having to pull up, and how people are getting boats out. And they're having to carry boats long distances. They're using roller tubes to roller. Here's my company right here, running boats up. Here's actually the Park Service getting boats up at this boat ramp. And this is a huge incline. And having to use these roller tubes with winches pulling these boats out. Here's a boat as they're pulling it up, it fell off, and a bunch of people trying to get that boat back onto the trailer to secure it. Winches break, as we all kind of know. Here's a winch that broke and it came back and released and hit this guy in the face. And then, this is a takeout right here of pulling boats up, everything coming out. And then they've come in and they've repaired it, but as soon as the water comes up, it's what it does with this, we call it this Lake Powell sediment. It's this horrible sediment that it saturates with water, and then as the water dries out, it just collapses on itself, and it just sloughs off into the river. And so they'll come in and they'll try to do this work, but it doesn't last very long. It sloughs off, creates these, at some points there's been 10-foot drops, from where it's sloughed off down to the river. And then when we get high water, it comes in and it just destroys everything and makes it so that you can't use it. And then one of the other issues is as Lake Powell continues to not be full, the lake is dropping faster than the sediment can reduce itself, and it's creating these rapids coming through. And so that's one of the, it's just, it can't keep up with it. This is the mud that's coming. This is the lake, we call it the Lake Powell Formation, is this mud coming through here. Then having to roller tube, things up. For us, as you guys were talking, like our company, we can't take our boats out here. Taking these boats out involves a semi truck and taking these boats completely apart, rolling up the tube, sort of on. So we're then letting our people off at this ramp, and then we're motoring 45 miles to Bullfrog, and then when we get to Bullfrog, Bullfrog has three lanes, I think, right now, because the ferry ramp is not usable. We take up 2 of these to de-rig these boats and take them apart. And when we get down there, we really have nowhere to go. We have no option. So we'll start taking boats apart. Last year on Memorial Day weekend, I bet you there was boats 8 miles up the road, almost to Tickaboo, waiting to get in because we were taking boats apart. And it's a horrible situation that, we don't really have anywhere else to go or anything to do. And so, here's what they're trying to do is here's where the boat ramp ends, the concrete ramp ends. And now they're trying to extend this ramp all the way down here and create something. But our concern is that the way this sediment is that it's just going to saturate with water as the lake comes up or as the river comes up, and it'll become unusable. And you can here's a historic picture of where the historic channel is, as it comes through here. And this is where right now where this red arrow is, and the yellow thing is where the river currently is. And anyway, that's a little bit of what we're trying to deal with on Lake Powell with Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. I know that Ty's been very supportive of us trying to make things happen. But 18 years this has been going on, and this is what people taking boats out have dealt with for 18 years at North Wash, and nothing can get done. So anyway, there's a real push. We're having to do a push, and kind of we've come to the conclusion amongst ourselves that nothing's going to get done until someone gets their arm cut off or killed at that ramp. Is what it's going to take before something happens down there. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys so that if it does come up in the future, you guys can see kind of firsthand or secondhand what everybody's dealing with down there. So anyway, that was it. I think it took like 8 minutes.
Okay. I mean, it is scary. I had no idea. And I don't know how many of the other board members. Is there anything and Ty, you said you've been working with it. Is there anything that as a board we can do to be of assistance?
So what do you suggest be done down there, Jason?
What was that? I didn't quite hear you.
What are you?
He's asking what we suggest to be, what's the suggestion that is going to be given to be done?
Well, so our suggestion is that our fear is that if they go to that other ramp and they put that other ramp in, that it's not going to be usable. It'll be usable for a short period of time. That there needs to be, whether they create a ramp at North Wash that or they go into the other ramp. And I don't know. We don't know what a solution is that's really going to work, but the solutions that they've been putting forth, they haven't. They're not going to work. I mean, North Wash has proved that it hasn't worked, and so I don't know what the solution, but there needs to be a solution because there's getting to be more and more use on this ramp. You know, the private boaters are starting to really use Cataract Canyon because it used to be that right after you got after the last rapid, you had about 30 miles of Lake Powell that you had to float across before you got to take out.